to the official podcast of DogsDaily.com, a Sports Illustrated channel.
Gets to the edge. Sonny Michel will send the Dogs home to the championship game.
If you're looking for the latest Georgia Bulldog news in football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting, then you're in the right place.
Anthony Edwards with the jam. Are you kidding me?
Hosted by Dogs Daily writers Jeremiah Stoddard, Kyle Funderburk, and Jonathan Williams.
Here's a pitch. Hit high out into right center with some carry. It's got a chance. This ball is out of here. Tucker Bradley has won it.
Just sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for these hot takes you're about to listen to.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Classic City Sports. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard along with Jonathan Williams here, doing it remotely. It is spring break at UGA, so Jonathan's got, stuff going on there. Everybody's been traveling and all that, so we are doing it remotely this week. But we're excited to bring another good episode to you as well. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. The NFL Combine just finished up, and all of Georgia's players that were there just absolutely blew everything away. So everything to go over there. How that impacts recruiting and everything moving forward for Georgia as well is something we are going to cover. And then also got our King of the Hill segment tonight, which I won't spoil too much on anything of it. But, sometimes a local team here in Atlanta doesn't always draft certain players from university in the same state. So it's going to be over that general topic. So, but we'll jump straight into things over the Combine recap itself. And Jonathan, we sat here last week and we talked about, different players that needed to have a good week this week, players that, or a good, showing at the Combine, a good day, and just what they were able to put together. I think a few of the players we talked about had incredible times in the Combine as well, and actually improved their stock as well. But just give me your first reaction to when you saw how everything started going down after the first day of the Combine on Thursday. How are you feeling about everything with Georgia?
I mean, if we're just going based off of the first day, George Pickens got things started off right for UGA. We talked about how he predicted himself to run in the 4.3, 4.4 range, and I myself didn't necessarily expect him to run that. I thought he'd maybe be in the 4.5 range, but boy, did he prove us wrong. He ended up hitting in the 4.4 range, and that's just basically that set the tone.
No,
yes,
4.47,
I believe so.
4.47.
Yes. So he got things. That was basically the tone setter for UGA at the Combine, because after that, everything was just rolling for them. I expected a good number of UGA players to have a good weekend at the Combine, but I didn't expect basically everybody to just absolutely crush it at the Combine. It seemed like everybody who at least participated in the events, because you had a couple guys that didn't. N'Kobe Dean and Darian Kendrick did not participate in the events at the Combine. They just went in there, got their measurables, and called it a day. But everybody that ran the 40, it seemed like everybody was blown away. Georgia was trending on Twitter because of it. Everybody was raving about them. And specifically, of course, as we expected, we told everybody that Jordan Davis was going to do something special in the 40-yard dash. And he absolutely did that. At 341 pounds, I believe, let me see, I got it pulled up right over here. He ran a 4.78, which it says, which is the fastest ever for a player over 310 pounds, and second at his position. And I believe number one at their position was Devontae Wyatt. So yeah, great overall weekend.
With a 4.77. Yeah. So just barely edged him out just a little bit.
It was just an insane weekend. Trayvon Walker, I think specifically, was a guy that made himself a lot of money at the Combine this weekend. He was projected probably to be a mid-round first pick before going into the Combine. Heck, even before, earlier in the year when everybody was declaring for the draft, he was kind of a guy that was he might sneak into the first round. Now he's projected to be a top 5 pick, one of the first players to be taken off the board, and he's now being recognized as a must-have in this draft. If you want him, you better get him early because he's not going to be there long. So really, it was a free advertisement for UGA football, because everybody was talking about them. Anytime you tuned on coverage, they were finding a way to talk about UGA players, whether it be Jordan Davis, James Cook, or anybody really.
No, absolutely. And the crazy thing about, Trayvon Walker was, like you said, it was especially after the year even ended, I don't think that there was a lot of buzz first round necessarily right away for, the outside perspective, there might have been plenty of people that might have had him in there, because I don't think you just go from late, or second round or something and just instantly all of a sudden, even leading up to the combine, that you're all of a sudden a first round draft pick. I think it was well known, but like you said, maybe he sneaks into the first round kind of thing. And then leading up to the combine, it was all of a sudden, I think one of the predictions, that you and I looked at had him going 16th to the Eagles at one point, and we were looking at all that. All of a sudden, with his performance this weekend, just absolutely blowing away every single category that he was in, all of a sudden he could theoretically be a top 10 pick. And to me, I think that's where he's arguably a lock for the top 10. I don't know that it just depends on, there's a couple of defensive ends or edge rushers that are projected to go in that spot that he could even, Thibodeau is projected to go. I think he's supposed to be the first defensive end or edge rusher to go off the board.
Aiden Hutchinson's been talked about as being number one overall pick. So
Hutchinson being a number one or number two overall pick is one that I saw. And then Thibodeau, Kayvon Thibodeau being the second guy. So you have him theoretically being the third guy off the board at that position. But even so, he still could easily be one of the projections that I saw after the combine actually had him going in the top 10. I won't get to exactly where just yet. We'll get to that stuff later on. But he theoretically has locked in that spot for a top 10 argument. And maybe he did enough to say that he could be better than Thibodeau. Maybe not Hutchinson, because he is, like you said, he was looking at being a number one overall pick. Last one I read, I think it had him at number 2 overall. So maybe he doesn't jump that high, but maybe he dethrones Thibodeau and goes top 5. It's very possible.
Yeah, and what's crazy also is that if Trayvon is indeed taken with the 5th pick, it would be the highest selected UGA player at the defensive line position since it was, I think, 2006. I believe is Jonathan Stewart by the New Orleans Saints with the 6th overall pick as a defensive lineman. So he would take the crown for the highest overall defensive lineman player from UGA to be picked. And he would also be the first UGA defensive lineman taken in the first round of the NFL draft since 2013. It's been that long since UJ has put in, or actually drafted at all, not even first round. UJ hasn't had a defensive lineman drafted at all since 2013. And they're looking at having 4 of them this year's draft, maybe 5. Like, it's crazy. I've seen some that have as many as 6 UJ players taken in the first round. So draft night is definitely going to be a good night for the University of Georgia. It's going to be a lot of money handed to those guys, and it was well earned this weekend. They did everything that was needed of them to do that.
So we had the 4 guys that we were looking at originally with Nakobe Dean, Trayvon Walker, Jordan Davis, and Devontae Wyatt. Those were the 4 guys that even leading up to the combine that was kind of looking at a first round lock almost, or at least some of them being kind of a later first round, but still looking like coming off the board in the first round of the draft. A new name that surfaced in that, which I know you kind of hinted at a second ago, with like sometimes 5 or even 6 guys from Georgia being predicted in a couple of areas. One guy that really stood out to me that jumped up there that kind of caught me off guard was even Lewis Cine has been talked about potentially being a first-round draft pick all of a sudden after he ran, I think it was a 4.37, and then just showed up in other categories and stuff at the combine as well. I think he was the biggest surprise for me at the NFL combine overall, because I knew he was fast. You've seen him come downhill and help in the run game so quickly. You've seen him close and stuff that quickly. I had no idea he had 4.37 speed in him from his time at Georgia. The tapes probably got it. You could, if you really look at it, I'm sure you can find it. I'm sure you can go talk to Brooks Austin, and he'll find exactly what you need to see to show that speed on tape. There's plenty of clips of him making big plays at the line of scrimmage from the secondary on run plays and stuff like that. But to see him with that kind of speed, I think that was my biggest surprise, because we talked about Jordan Davis having, sub 5 speed, at the combine, and I didn't quite expect it to be a 4.78, but I did expect it to be, 4.9s, somewhere low 4.9s or something like that. But 4.78 was crazy. But seeing Lewis Cine with that kind of speed absolutely blew me away too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Lewis Cine was definitely someone that was a bit surprising. He also had the longest broad jump amongst all safeties as well. So he measured out really well at the combine as well. And he's definitely seen an uptick in his draft stock as well. It's just another one of those safeties that you really don't see a lot of things that you wouldn't want in a safety at the next level. He's a guy that has no issue coming down and helping in the run game. And really, he just like something that you want in a safety is you want him to have a presence on the football field. You want guys to know that he is there. They may not see him, but they always know that Lewis Cine is on the field, and that's exactly what he provides. When you're coming over the middle of the field as a receiver or running back or whoever, you know that 16 is lurking in your peripheral somewhere, and if you're coming over the field making a catch, you always know, like you always have that fear of, okay, am I about to get my head taken off by this dude? Because that's his type of presence. He hits hard, he runs fast, he just makes plays all over the field. So that's exactly what you get out of Lewis Cine. And I think NFL GMs have noticed that now, especially after seeing the speed that he does have. I also did not expect him to run a sub 4.4. But now that you know that he has that and he's just a freak athlete on top of that, there's not much you can complain about that. And then I think also another surprise that came to me was I did not expect Zamir White to post the 40-yard time that he did. Zamir White, let me get it pulled up right here real quick. He ran a 4.4 flat. In fact, it was quicker than James Cook's.
That was another huge surprise for me right there. I was about to say, I actually had that pulled up, and that was going to be the next thing I said was, if I made you put $50 on one of the running backs, as who was going to run the fastest 40 time, who would you have put it on? And
I'm taking James Cook 10 out of 10 times.
Every time. I always would have, because that's another guy out there, just like Lewis Cine, that shocked me with his speed. I thought the same way that you were talking about with Pickens, I thought that Zamir was going to come in somewhere in the mid 4.5s. I thought maybe a 4.55, 4.53, somewhere like that was kind of what you were looking at. Coming out and running a 4.4 flat, I think earned him a lot of money in this draft because it showed people that he has the speed to go along with that physical play style that he has and all of the stuff that he does in that side of it. Plus, there was a lot of talk about his ability to catch the ball at the combine and the on-field workouts that they did as well. So I think he really locked himself in some cash in this draft as well. Maybe he has another career that surprises you in the NFL. Maybe he comes out and has a Nick Chubb type career. I'm not going to necessarily dub it immediately because I don't want to set expectations too high, but he plays very physical like Chubb always did too. And if you add that extra speed in there, it's incredible what he's capable of accomplishing at the next level.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially with Zamir, knowing that he's had 2 ACL tears, one in each knee as well, for him to go out there and post a 4.4 flat in the 40-yard, that just tells you his speed is still there. His explosiveness is still there. His strength is there. He's just a do-it-all guy. He does the dirty work. He's always going to pick up yards for you. He's not going to go down on the first tackle. He's just, I don't want to compare him to Nick Chubb, but it's one of those type of players where he's just kind of a do-it-all guy. You can ask him to do anything, and he's there for you. And then, I think also them talking about being able to catch out of the backfield, that's a big thing, especially in the direction that NFL offenses are going.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of Alvin Kamara's, Christian McCaffrey, those type of guys where they're utilized in the backfield. So that's not necessarily Zamir's role. I don't think that'll be his role in the NFL because that wasn't his role at UGA. But it's good to know that, hey, if you need him to do that, he is there for you. He can just he's kind of a Swiss Army knife, if you will, at the running back position. He can block for you. He's a third down guy. Whatever you need of Zamir, he's there for you. And that's valuable in the NFL draft, especially when running backs are not as of hot commodity as they once were in the NFL draft, when they're kind of they're usually not taken until the second round. So that's big for him to have that type of weekend at the combine, because any type of uptick in your draft stock as a running back, you'll take it at this point, because as we know, like each draft pick, the higher you are, the more money you're going to get on that initial signing bonus and stuff.
That's
a
huge,
big deal. Any uptick at all in your draft selection is huge for you, for your pockets at least.
Absolutely. And he's a guy that we sat here and talked about, leading up to it. Actually, he was a guy that I said, I expected him to lead Georgia's offense in total offensive yards because of his ability to, run the ball. And I said he would have a little bit of a tick up in receiving this season at UGA, which he only had 9 catches for 75 yards, which is a little lower than I thought he might. I thought he might be able to track in a couple hundred yards there and actually be over 1,000 yards total in his total production at UGA. But to me, I looked at him as being that guy that could actually produce a lot for you overall. But I think a lot of people just kind of slept on his career even at UGA, even though that the guy was out here running for 850 yards this last season. He was not that far off from 1,000-yard season, even with it, even a total offense, almost at 1,000 yards, off by about 75 yards maybe in that category. But he's a guy that maybe he was slept on a little bit, and then coming out there and seeing that he adds that speed, the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield at the combine, all of a sudden maybe he does jump up the draft board a little bit. And like you said, every single pick that you jump up, even if you went up 5 picks, say he was a mid second round pick, and maybe he's 5 picks up on that or something like that. I'm not saying he's that. I'm just using this as an example. Say that's the case. He may make several $100,000 more on his signing bonus because of that. Every single position up on that, even if you go from 10th in the second round to 9th in the second round, you're going to make a little bit more money because of that. Each position makes a difference for it. So he earned himself some more money for sure, because I promise you he jumped up some people's boards this weekend. Absolutely did.
Yeah, and I think you talking about Zamir was maybe kind of slept on during his time at EJ. I think part of the reason of that is because, when you had your Sony Michel, you had your heck, you could even throw DeAndre Swift in there a little bit, Todd Gurley, etc. All those guys, you knew that they were probably going to be good for at least a big gain at some point. They were going to break a couple tackles and just take one, if not all the way down for a touchdown. They're going to gain substantial yards. Zamir really wasn't that. Yeah, Zamir really wasn't that type of running back, and partly was because of how UJ's offensive line was this year. They really weren't built for that type of explosive run play. So I think it's like he was a very quiet runner. Like he'd pick up 4 yards, and he'd pick up 5, he'd pick up 3, and he just did that all game long. And then maybe at the end of the game, he might pick up a 25-yarder late in the fourth quarter or something like that. So he was a very quiet runner. James Cook was the same way. That's kind of how UGA has been lately with their running backs, as they're just kind of quiet. They're being efficient. They're getting they're picking up all their yards, and they're doing their job. It's just not picking up like a 75-yard touchdown run or anything like that. It's just very quiet, very efficient, and very consistent.
It's grinding him out. But the whole point of it is he still averaged 5.4 yards a carry this year, and he had just under somewhere between 10 and 11 carries per game during the season. So on 10 to 11 carries per game, he was able to, add up 856 yards rushing. That 5.4 yards a carry, that's good, man. Yeah, maybe he's not out there giving you that 70-yard, burst of a run, that huge run that everyone loved, and rightfully so, from James Cook in the national championship game where he busted one off for 60-something yards. That was huge, right? Zamir was capable of doing that. He has done that a few times in his career, quite a few times, just not as consistent, I think. But the difference with him is he's not going to do that once a game, and that's going to be his production. What he is going to do is he's going to grind out 5 yards a carry for you 10 times a game and have 50 to 60 yards for you, and just absolutely eat away at that defense late in the game. Think about the Clemson game this year. When there was 3.5, 4 minutes left in the game, what'd they do? Turn around and hand it to Zamir White every time for like a consistent 4 or 5 carries or something in a row, and just grinding those yards out, just absolutely destroying the defenses when they're tired and they have to go up against this physical runner of Zamir White. That's what he brings to the table for you. And I think there's definitely a huge place for him in the NFL, especially if he can show his ability to catch out of the backfield a little bit more. And he does need a little bit of more production from that in the NFL, because like you said, they use running backs a lot differently in the NFL. They use them in the passing game a lot more. You have guys like Christian McCaffrey out there absolutely killing the game in that side of it too. So I think he does need to improve that side a little bit, and maybe he can do it. He just hasn't been asked to do it, because you've had James Cook, you've had Kenny McIntosh right there with them. So those guys get those type of snaps and those carries. So you haven't needed that from Zamir White. I think he's a really good running back at playing his role and what you need him to do.
Yeah, and another thing that plays into that with him not getting those like heavy amount of carries, like there's some guys in college football that are toting the rock 38 times a game every single Saturday, but Georgia doesn't do that anymore. They rotate a lot. They put a lot of guys back there, but that also they may not have the numbers. They may not have 1,000 yards every season like some of these other guys in the draft, but what they do have is they have stability and they're fresh coming in the NFL, which plays into the part of why running backs necessarily aren't necessarily taken a lot in the first round anymore, is because, everybody says like they last maybe 8 years. You maybe get 8 good years in the NFL as a running back now. Well, UGA's kind of flipped the philosophy around. Is like, okay, well, you may not be getting like 1,200 yards every season. You may not be contending for a Heisman here. But what you are going to be is you're going to be fresh and ready to go in the NFL, and you're going to outlast these other guys, which is also valuable to have right now, because some of these other guys that are kind of running their stint pretty quickly, and
it's really valuable to your pocket. I'll tell you
that. Exactly. Just look at Sony Michel. Sony Michel, he may not be necessarily one of the primary runners for the Rams this last year, but he was used a lot because, one, he was good at pass blocking, which everyone knows if you play running back at UGA, you better be good at pass blocking.
And he had a huge block in the Super Bowl.
He had one every game, it seemed like. Every time I turned the TV on with the Rams, it seemed like he was laying a dude out protecting Matthew Stafford, and that's valuable.
Or laying out to block somebody too. Like I watched him leave his feet diving to make sure he got. So think about like
sacrificing his body.
James Cook's block on that the 50 or 45-yard, whatever it was, touchdown to A.D. Mitchell in the national championship game. That's the same type of play that James Cook kind of dove out of his way to try to get even a piece of the rushing, Alabama player. That's the kind of stuff he does. It does enough to just dive. He'll leave his feet to make sure he gets there in front of the guy. That he does the same kind of stuff. I watched him do it for Matt Stafford several times this year. It's incredible.
Yeah, those minor details matter, and those minor details are the ones that keep you in the league a little bit longer than those other dudes, and it's what also, like we said, keeps that money flowing into your pocket.
Yeah, you always have that money coming in on there. If you can stick around in the league for 10 years, which is tough for running backs to do because they do have shorter shelf lives for, in the NFL because of how much of a beating they take. But also you're kind of seeing that change throughout the league as well. Where you're actually seeing teams want to go towards more of the style where they have two running backs they can switch in and out because they don't think about like Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, in Cleveland. That's the type of style that the NFL needs to be doing too, because they'll get more out of their running backs by doing that as well. And they still have guys like Nick Chubb just absolutely going off and putting the NFL on notice in that type of system. So it can be done in the NFL too. And I think that Georgia is building that type of running back that also when they get there, they're not going to be selfish runners either when they get there. So like teams are able to put them in that type of role in the NFL because they're willing to do it.
Well, just think about Derrick Henry with the Tennessee Titans right now. He's a guy. I mean, that is their entire offense right now, and he was Alabama's entire offense for the most part as well. So he's been taking the bulk of the carries for a long time now during his football career. But he's also had to endure quite a few injuries already with the Tennessee Titans. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it makes you wonder. Like that's a guy that's taken a lot of hits every single game. And he's also been a guy that's had to endure quite a few injuries. Same with Christian McCaffrey. He was a guy that's it seems like he's injured all the time. Fantasy owners have not been happy with Christian McCaffrey as of late because you pick him up usually in the first round, but then he ends up being injured for half the season. And you can't help but think that part of the reason why is because although he is heavily using the offense, and boy, that's really good for your PPR league. But at the same time, it means he's getting hit a lot, and there's a higher chance that he gets injured. Whereas if you're Nick Chubb and you're rotating with Kareem Hunt, you don't really have to worry about that as much. And Nick Chubb has stayed healthy for the most part during his stint with Cleveland.
Yeah, he has. And correct me if I'm wrong on this too, because I think Zamir was projected somewhere around like the 5th round potentially.
He was floating around that range.
So he's a guy that's looking at later in the draft, right? He could have theoretically put himself up another round. He could go from a 5th round to like a earlier 4th round, mid 4th round kind of pick. And that goes back to the conversation where how much more money he could theoretically make from his performance at the combine and what people were able to see from him as well. And like you said, like he could go mix in somewhere like that, like Chubb does right now and still be doing well. I think he could theoretically have a really good NFL career. I do. I think he has the potential to have a solid NFL career, be in the league for, several years and have time to make plenty of money.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think too is that UGA had 14 guys invited to the combine. I think they have 16 total, I believe, that entered the draft officially. You're looking at like close to half of those guys being gone by the end of the 2nd round. I mean, that's the type of range that these guys are in. When you throw in Quay Walker, you start talking about Channing Tindall, and you start talking about Darian Kendrick, all these other guys that maybe aren't being projected as 1st-round picks, but they're right there at the 2nd round. George Pickens is a fringe 2nd round, maybe possible late 1st round in some scenarios, possibly. It's crazy that you could see half of UJ's draft class just be gone by the end of the 2nd round. It just like that. It's insane. And it also pivots us into how Kirby Smart has the best recruiting pitch in probably maybe all of college football right now. We had some comments talking about how Trey Scott won't have any more problems recruiting at all, as if he didn't already. He didn't have any problems already recruiting defensive linemen, but he dang sure ain't going to have any more either, and neither will Kirby Smart, because I made a tweet today that said, if I'm Kirby Smart, anytime I'm on the recruiting trail, my main recruiting pitch is just me turning on the NFL Combine and showing UJ's players' performances there, and then also flooding them with hundreds of articles that have been written about those guys and the exposure that they've received after this past weekend. Because like I said, if you ever turned on the NFL Combine coverage this last weekend, it was hard not to find a moment where they weren't saying Georgia or UGA in the same breath, because it was constant. It was free advertisement essentially for UGA, and a free recruiting pitch also, because these guys were obviously ready they were prepared to come to the Combine. They were ready to compete. And I believe it was Quay Walker who touched on it, or maybe even Channing Tindall. I can't remember. It was one of the two. They were like, yeah, my time at UJ definitely prepared me for this, because every single practice was NFL like. He was like, think about it. Like the other 13 dudes that are here with me, that's who I was practicing against every single day. And so he's like, they were talking about how Kirby Smart by design makes his practices to where you are ready to go into the NFL. You are prepared to be a day one starter and be an immediate contributor in the NFL. And that's if that isn't music to recruiters, to high school players' ears, I don't know what is.
No, absolutely. And it's one of those things that everybody always came out and were for the negative recruiters, right? For against Georgia was that one, Georgia couldn't win a national championship, squash that. The other one that, weren't developing certain position groups or something like that. So like defensive line, like you said, hasn't had somebody get drafted, not even in the first round, but like drafted since 2013. Well, they're about to have 2 guys go in the first round this year.
Trey
Scott has 3 guys. Yeah, 3 guys go in the first round this year. Sorry, I was thinking like interior D-line.
No, you're good.
I wasn't thinking about defensive end with Trayvon. So yeah, Trayvon's also going in the first round. So you're going to have 3 guys from that defensive line group go in the first round of this draft after not having somebody drafted at all since 2013. That's insane. So instantly now they've got all of these, defensive line recruits that they can go to and say, hey, I know all these other schools like to say, well, we don't develop defensive line here. We don't get them to the league. Guess what? We got 3 of them to the league this year in the first round. The first round. So instantly you squash that instantly.
And what's special about this draft class specifically for UJ is that you could just go down the list and be like, oh, running back, yeah, we got you. James Cook, Zamir White. Offensive line, yeah, Justin Schaefer, Jamari Sawyer. Defensive line, Trayvon Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis. We got you there. Linebacker, Tyndall, Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean. We got you. Cornerback, Darian Kendrick. We got you. Safety, Lewis Seam. We got you. Oh, we even put punters in the league as well. Jake Carmada went out there and ran a freaking 4.56 40-yard, which is the best for a punter as well. So you even got punters out there running insane 40 times, just absolutely putting in work at the combine. So you can just go down the list. Any player you want to recruit, that's all you got to say is like, oh yeah, we put those type of guys in league. You want to come here, you'll play on Sundays. It's the best recruiting pitch you could possibly ask for if you're Kirby Smart or on his staff right now.
Absolutely. And it's not going to stop either. There's other guys on the roster. Like we're talking about defensive line and all that right now. Plenty of comments came out instantly from NFL's evaluators, from other people in the Georgia space and stuff that said, hey, those 2 guys that are on the defensive line that are about to go in the first round, not even the best defensive lineman at the University of Georgia right now. Talking about Jalen Carter being a sure first round pick at this point in my head. Like he's got the talent. He's got to put a little bit on field this next year, obviously, but next year he could easily be a first round draft pick at the defensive line as well. So once again, it goes back to not being able to develop the defensive line. It's going to be consecutive years in a row where they're going to put somebody out in the first round.
Oh, it's the new norm of UGA football, because just like you said, look at the coming years. You got Jalen Carter that's going to be coming in the draft next year. And then the running back room is loaded as it always is. Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Milton are the ones that are going to be the newly added ones to the league potentially soon. Brock Bowers in 2 years is going to be a guy that'll put on an absolute show at the combine. I'll go ahead and tell you that. Linebackers.
I can't wait to see his 40 time.
Oh, dude, you want to talk about a guy moving? That Brock Bowers will be a guy that is absolutely moving down that line. Linebackers, we know the deal with linebackers. You start, if you play linebacker at the University of Georgia, you will play on Sundays. That has become evident during over these last few years. And then the cornerbacks, that cornerback class is loaded right now. Over the next few years, it'll be really interesting to see how much talent they develop in that area. And then safeties as well. Star with Tyke Smith. It is just like I said, go down the list and it's never ending. This is the new norm for UGA. This will be the new norm for the combine. I have a feeling like is that you just constantly hear about these guys like, man, Georgia produces some talent out there. Man, they get these guys ready for the league. I've never seen anything like it.
No, the close, like what we're seeing right now for Georgia is stuff that you've been able to see for Alabama for the last like decade, right? Like you've seen them constantly have guys put into the first round. You always have 5 guys or so 4 guys get drafted in the first round from Alabama. You always see them get all the invites at the combine and show out that kind of stuff. And you see the stuff. But this year, Georgia wins the national championship, takes the limelight, and absolutely just blows away the media and takes that away from Alabama. I haven't heard them talk that much about Alabama players at all after this combine stuff, outside of seeing different Alabama players make excuses for losing in the national championship game on national TV. But that's always fun, right? At least was it Sawyer that clapped back at that?
Oh yeah,
I think it was Sawyer.
Clap back. It was very short and sweet, but he clapped back.
It was. The game's over. We scored more points, bro. Whatever, something like that. That was perfect
right there.
But go ahead.
Something that people were like, "Oh, just wait till Kirby Smart starts recruiting with a ring on the recruiting trail." How about you start talking about what it's going to look like when Kirby Smart's going on the recruiting trail, talking about 4 first-round picks, possibly 5 first-round picks in the NFL draft after this draft class. Then that's where the real recruiting, I think, is at, because winning national titles is great. Every player wants to win. Every player wants to win a national title. But what really speaks volumes is you develop those players and you put them in the league and you make them successful. And like we said, you get some money flowing in their bank accounts. That's what's really going to start talking. And if they can finally see that, if they can finally see the finished product of that, I think that's where a lot of the recruiting, that's where that's what's going to bring more success on the recruiting trail. A national title, of course, that recruits itself. You're talking about a successful program that's a sustained success, but now you're talking about producing players into the league, which is what pretty much every college football player's dream is, to get to the NFL and finally make it, as they would say.
Well, it's funny too, because like one of the things that everybody used to say on the social media and like all the rival fans and stuff like that, I doubt you had a bunch of coaches saying this, because I don't think that was the narrative across the league, but like from a public perspective, like everyone wanted to say Kirby Smart can't develop players, right? Last year, and I know you'll know this too, I can't remember the exact number of what it was, but last year, didn't Georgia break a school record for players drafted last year?
Yeah, they did. And they're about to crush it.
Yeah. So they broke that record last season. That was Kirby Smart's first season or first NFL draft with a full roster of guys that he recruited. His entire, that was his first draft class, basically. And he broke the school record for players drafted in a single draft. Now he's about to shine that by going with probably one of the more highest number of players taken in the first round at UGA in a single season.
Oh, it'll be a record. 4 would be a record.
4 would be the record. I didn't look that up before. I should have. I just thought about it right now when we were talking. But so he'll break that record. Then he's going to even break his own record from last season of number of players drafted in the NFL, like in one single draft. This is only his second full recruiting class. Like you said, now he's out here recruiting with that resume, like that on there, showing what he's been able to do in those 2 NFL drafts. That is his guys that he had on his roster the entire time. He's going to absolutely blow it away on the recruiting trail, especially when you start adding the ring to it as well. Like he is absolutely about to, like he's been top 3, recruiting classes every single season since he got at Georgia, pretty much anyways. Now he's got the ring. Now he's got the proof of product by showing how many guys he's gotten to the league. It's about to be ungodly.
Yeah. And everybody's something else that people have always said is, it's great. You got all these top recruiting classes. How about you do something with them? Well, that's what he's done. And the accolades keep racking up for Kirby Smart. The accolades keep racking up for this staff. And it's just like the sky is the limit at this point for this team. And it honestly could just be the spark of a dynasty building up. I think it truly is. It just seems like it's on the upward trend right now, and everything, like all the pieces are falling into place for them. So now it's really going to be interesting to see how they build off of this momentum and where things go off of this.
I think that's what you're hitting on there is that momentum recruiting and stuff at this point. Like Kirby Smart's always been big at that on a different level in a different way at UGA. Like it's momentum recruiting is all of a sudden you're going to see 4 guys in the matter of 2 days announce they're committed to UGA
And
because
he's
they get
always
that
been like
green.
that on the
He's
trail.
always done that. Yeah, he's always done that. Now you've got a different side of the momentum recruiting where he's got momentum from proof of product. Once again, he's got evidence of what he has been able to do with these guys on multiple draft occasions after this one. And he will it's a different type of momentum in recruiting where now he's going to have everyone begging to come play at Georgia, and the select few get to come and actually do it. So anyone that he wants, for the most part, there's still schools like Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and stuff that are going to pull some pretty big names out there. So he's not going to get every single person that he wants, but he's going to be able to get the majority of people he wants at this point. He is, because he has shown them that he can do it on so many levels at this point. Like nobody can come back and say, well, he can't win a national championship. Well, he can't get guys to the league at your position. Like, what are they going to say back to him now that's negative? Well, the closest thing you're going to get is like, well, he might tell you you're going to get this type of playing time, but maybe you get there and you don't get that kind of playing time. I'm here to tell you that's going to happen anywhere you go. Either you're a baller or you're not, and you're going to earn the playing time. Everyone's going to tell you, like, you can come here and get some playing time, but most of the time you're going to hear that disclaimer of, hey, you got to prove that you're worth that playing time at the same time. So somebody else is also trying to do that same thing.
You're forgetting his biggest weakness, Jeremiah. He can't develop a quarterback. He can't do it. You're forgetting the bane of Kirby Smart's existence right now is he can't develop a quarterback.
He didn't take a walk-on quarterback to a national title. He didn't do that.
He can't do it. Quarterbacks, he just can't do it. Can't figure it out. He loses all the big names. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, he loses the big names. He can't seem to recruit that position, right?
Yeah, Kirby Smart can't recruit. Yeah, can't do nothing about that. Oh, well. I guess that it'll just be the downfall of UJ football, probably. That's what we can assume at this point.
Let's go ahead and put this on the screen before you segue. Is it too early to start petitioning for Kirby to be named King of Georgia? You know what? I'm going to go ahead and give him that title. He's definitely earned it in the football realm, so we'll go ahead and give it to him on a statewide level.
Yeah, I don't know who the heck else you would give it to. Lord.
I'm with you.
I think he's very deserving of that, at the very least at this point. Yeah, so with all of this draft talk, and of course, with as much buzz that is surrounding UJ football right now and their draft class, that's going to segue us into our final segment of the show tonight, which is King of the Hill. It's become a reoccurrence of this show. It's become one of our favorite segments every week, and we've loved doing it this offseason. So we're going to keep it rolling again this week. And this week, it's more of just kind of a rant, open rant for both of us. I know you and I both feel the same way about this subject. We've talked about it numerous times off of the show. So I felt like it was good for us to bring it onto the show, actually put it into writing or audio, I guess, in this instance. But it's the topic of UGA football, Atlanta Falcons not drafting UGA football players. Anytime it's draft season, I don't care who it is or how many guys are coming out of UGA to go in the NFL. It doesn't matter. You're always going to see it on Twitter. You're going to see it everywhere. You're going to see in the comments of the Atlanta Falcons Twitter account. Anytime they make a draft selection of, well, this player from Georgia was on the board, but you didn't take them. Same old bullcrap, whatever. And I'm here to tell you, Georgia fans, they are not obligated to take UGA football players. I don't care who you are. No. Let's put this into perspective for a little bit. So I believe there's 129 or 130 FBS football teams in all of college football. That's 130 teams, and you can multiply that by 80 or however many scholarship players teams have on their football team as well. So that's a very big number, Jeremiah. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's a very big number, and that's a very big amount of guys that are coming into the draft every single year. And you want to know how many picks Atlanta has in the draft usually every year? 7. And so you're telling me that of those 7 picks, out of all of the players in the NFL draft, that they have to, or they're obligated, or they should take a player from Georgia? I'm here to tell you that there's other talented players that don't play at UGA, that don't wear a G on the side of their head for 4 years in college. There are other good players in college football. Look, as a Falcons fan, yeah, it was cool to see Todd Gurley play for the Falcons. It was nice to see that, a little homecoming type thing. It was a feel-good story. But at the same time, when it comes to NFL draft, you're trying to draft a guy that helps your team and fits your team's needs and that you think is going to help your team take that next step. That's not always a guy from UGA or a guy coming from Athens.
Yeah, and because and when you really look at it, right? So think about like a front office perspective from the Falcons. They're trying to win football games, right? They're not just trying to go at it as far as like a marketing campaign where they're going to get more people to want to come to a game because of X player is there from UGA, and so they got to look at it from a full perspective of trying to make their team the best they can, right? It's easy for us to sit here and say as Georgia like fans that the Georgia player at that position, right? So the safety, the edge rusher, the corner, or the quarterback, or the running back, whoever it is, it's easy to sit here and say, well, I think that that guy's better than the guy that the Falcons drafted. Easy to say. They're not always the best guy at that position left available when it comes time for them to go get that position in the draft, right? So in a first round draft pick with the Falcons right now, they sit at number 8. I will say this though, out of all of the years for the Falcons to potentially do it, this is the year to do it. I'm here to tell you that this is the year that the Falcons should draft a Georgia Bulldog player with that number 1 overall pick. And it's somebody I hinted at earlier, and it's a position need. It's going to be in my opinion, it's going to be the best available on the board when it comes to it. And it is probably their biggest need of it. And that's going to be Trayvon Walker because the Falcons need a pass rush so bad. They had 18 total sacks
Falcons
last year.
Everything. Dude, any position, it's a position of need.
Right. But their biggest one has got to be trying to get a pass rush established. He's going to be the best edge rusher on the board at that time if he's still on the board at 8. Because he could go earlier, like I talked about as well, which he could theoretically be a top 5 pick if maybe he slips in there in front of Thibodeaux or Hutchinson somehow. I don't think he slips in front of Hutchinson, but maybe in front of Thibodeaux. So he theoretically could be a top 5 pick, but I think that, if all stands, he should be available at 8. That's the time for the Falcons to take a player like that because it is the best available on the board, the best at the position. Like he fits the team needs. He's going to be what you need. This year as a whole is the year that if you're going to see the Falcons do it, it's the year to draft somebody in general because there's a lot of guys on this roster. Like we said, 14 guys went to the draft or to the combine. We've got 4 or 5 guys potentially going in the first round. I promise you there's a position of need for the Falcons that has a position, available from Georgia this season as well. But that if I had to pick one and if they don't get Trayvon Walker, I don't expect them necessarily to go out and get a Falcon or a Georgia Bulldog player, but they could go get Trayvon Walker to start everything off. And maybe all of this narrative goes away. Maybe they do draft a guy from Georgia for the first time in God knows how long, and everybody's happy about it. But to get back to your point, no, they are not required to do it because it's an in-state that had like an in-state school that has talent on there because there are plenty of schools across the league. You see guys come from San Diego or State or North Dakota State, South Dakota State that come out and absolutely ball out in the NFL because there are players at these random schools that are really good as well.
Yeah, and I think also I agree with you. I think if there ever were a year for the Falcons to draft a UGA player, I think it would be this year just because UGA has so many players that would fill a position of need for the Falcons right now. Like I said, the Falcons are down bad tremendously on their depth chart in a lot of areas, and they need help in a lot of places. So you really couldn't go wrong with any UGA player at this point. But at the same time, the way I look at it is when UGA is recruiting guys, when they're recruiting high school players, they're recruiting guys that are going to fit their environment. They're going to fit like the type of guys that they want on their football team, and they're going to fit there's got to be guys that are going to fit their scheme as well. So maybe Georgia players don't necessarily fit the Falcons scheme. Like every defensive coordinator has their own gimmick of how they want to do things, the type of guys that they want, etc. So maybe sometimes those UGA players that you really want on your team just aren't necessarily the best fit for the Falcons. Maybe they do take an edge rusher, but they don't take Trayvon Walker, and they don't because they feel that doesn't fill their position of need the best. Like Trayvon Walker may not fit who they want at edge rusher better than someone else that they want in the draft as well. So I think that has to play into account as well. But I think it would be really funny as well is that like this year, if they were to do it, it's like in the 7th round, they pick up Jake Carmada or something like that. And it's not even like a Trayvon Walker or Jordan Davis or anything. And they get Jake Carmada and they're like, here, Georgia fans, we got what you wanted. Go buy your freaking Jake Carmada jerseys and go with and it'd be funny too, because his jersey would probably be the highest selling jersey for the Falcons probably in like a month span or something like that. It'd be pretty funny.
Instantly.
And yeah. And another thing too is that it seems like like when they don't draft a UG player, they always pick up like one or two of them in the free agency. Like Jason Stanley had a stint with the Falcons for a little bit at cornerback, and they at least get to be on the practice squad and whatever. But yeah, they do not have a history of drafting them, and it has really riled up UGA fans. But I'm here to remind you guys, they're not obligated to, and there's just a lot of things that play into drafting guys, because you got to think too, like you're basing this draft pick, like it's a big decision. Like you got to hit, you have 7 draft picks. Like first through fourth round, especially, really, it's like, so you got 7 of them. You better hit on them and you better make them count. And so sometimes, maybe they don't feel like those UGA players are the guys that are going to make them hit on that draft pick at their position where they at in the draft. Like if they have a guy that they feel like, hey, he's probably not going to be here next go round and we really wanted him, so we got to take him here. Like there's a lot of things that play into the draft. There's a lot of schematics. And I'm definitely no NFL GM, so I'm not going to criticize those guys because I'm not in that position for a reason, and they are. So can't really criticize them. But yeah,
it's just, I think one of the biggest arguments for that everybody always likes to make, and I've gone back to this one myself too, and you go back to the draft where Todd Gurley went to the league, right? Todd Gurley, they could have gone with Todd Gurley in that draft. Instead, they went with Vic Beasley. Vic Beasley ended up being a bust, and so everyone goes back to where they needed a running back, decided not to go with Todd Gurley, went with Vic Beasley, and it didn't turn out well. So that's one of the things that everybody always goes back to. But that goes back to also where, they needed a running back. Did Todd Gurley fit the scheme that they were going to run? Did he fit in the offensive game plan that they were going to be doing? That's what people have to realize, that, and you hit on that earlier, and I think that's something that people forget about, is it has to be a fit. It can't just be the guy available from Georgia right now, so we need this position, so we're going to take him. It has to be a scheme fit. But with all of that, the reason I even bring up Trayvon Walker at number 8 for the Falcons was the other day, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, maybe just 2 days ago, the Falcons actually retweeted or posted something, and it was like, in the latest draft, we took, or in the latest mock draft, and they posted the article or something for it, that they took Trayvon Walker at number 8. And it was interesting to see, so it's something that actually could be a fit, because scouts out there, NFL scouts and evaluators, think that he could be a fit there. I've seen it on a couple of different places, and then that was like the second or third place I saw it when the Falcons actually posted that on Twitter, and it made me laugh. I was like, are they just trying to get Georgia fans riled up about this, or what's the move here? And then all the comments come in and start saying stuff like what our man Dan is out here saying right now, that the Falcons are going to go get somebody from Northwest East South Dakota, and that's what they expect.
Hey, those are Northwest East South Dakota football players are some mean machines, man. Don't be hating on them. Don't discriminate, Dan. We don't want to be doing none of that, all right? They're trolling us.
They're trolling us. I mean, they might be. You never know.
Yeah, at this point, it might be. And if so, that's pretty freaking funny, if you ask me. If they're just if they're going out of their way to troll some UGA fans, I think that's pretty freaking funny, if you ask me.
I'll take it. It's funny because it means it's on their mind too, right? Like they're acknowledging it, and they're like, "Hey guys, it doesn't work like this." Sorry, I just made my whole camera shake because I hit my desk. But they're like, it doesn't work this way. Sorry, but here you have this to kind of hold on to for the next couple of weeks until the draft comes around. That'd be pretty funny to me too.
Yeah, it is, and it's always so great because I know it's coming too, and it's every single time. Like I'm telling you, just go during this year in the NFL draft. Anytime the Falcons pick a player and they make their social media post about like, we have selected blah 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 with our 8th pick or whatever, just go to the replies, and every single one of them, for the majority, or not maybe for the majority, but there's going to be a lot of them that are like, oh, you didn't take a Georgia player. You guys are so stupid. You mess it up every single year. And it's just, at this point, I just laugh at it because I think it's so ridiculous to think that like, just because you're in Atlanta and UGA is, and they're both in the state of Georgia, they should be taking Georgia players. Like that's an obligation of theirs. I just honestly think it's funny at this point. And I think it was something that we needed to talk about on the show because I'm pretty passionate about the subject and I knew you were too. So that was our King of the Hill topic for today.
I get kind of tired of just seeing that, like the just random posts of like, well, why wouldn't they just take a Georgia player? They're great players. They are. There's so much that goes into it. These guys have to make sure it's going to be the right fit for the program, or for the franchise, and make sure it's going to, just work in several levels. And there are other players out there that might show them the same type of stuff on tape or, at the combine type stuff. Now this year, there's going to be very few players at same positions that are just outshining these guys. And especially think about like the 40. One of the things that the NFL evaluators love is speed, size and speed, because you can't really teach those things. Yeah, measurables. The measurables, exactly. Those aren't really teachable. They're either you have them or not. And Georgia players were in the top 5 of like every single category, at every position, just about of everything. So like they do measure up against anybody at this point. So this year of all years, the guys are the guys. So we'll see how it plays out. I saw one mock draft that had 2 to 3 players going from, University of Georgia to the Falcons actually throughout the draft. One was George Pickens with like a 2nd or 3rd round pick, I think. So that you could see something like that. They do need a wide receiver. They did just lose Calvin Ridley for the season, and I think they released him officially, or they're about to release him, one or the other, one of the things I read. So they've got a lot of stuff going on in there at that position too. So maybe, I think somebody in the comments, Zach might have said something earlier that they do need a wide receiver now. So maybe you see them stretch to get it. Please, God, do not take a wide receiver at number 8.
You're getting into a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other King of the Hill,
getting
man.
Fired up about the NFL draft already, and this isn't even a Falcons podcast, and he's getting fired up about it. But
there are so many wide receivers available to take somebody at 8.
Real Southern there. Wide receivers.
My bad. It's been a day. You got me started too. All right.
Who knew that when Jeremiah got all riled up, the Southern dialect got out? Now we know what type of person Jeremiah is when he gets.
I grew up in Oglethorpe County. It comes out every once in a while.
Oglethorpe. That rolls off the tongue real nice.
Oglethorpe. Yep. I'm from the South. Okay, I am. I promise you.
Oh, you don't have to remind us of that. We are very well aware. But that concludes our King of the Hill segment. So as we said, maybe this year is the year where the Falcons finally take a UGA player. They put it to bed. They put it to rest, just like UGA put all their questions and ridicule to rest with winning a national title and producing guys in the NFL. Maybe the Falcons join them and they finally take up. They pick a UGA player in the draft this year. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of good players. So there's a lot of potential for it to happen. Recap on the combine. I mean, wow. That's all you really need to say for UJ again. Just a lot of wow, oohs and ahs. That basically sums up their weekend at the combine. And then again, like we said, Kirby Smart has the best recruiting pitch in all of college football after this weekend because, like we said, they put on a show. The players showed out, and Kirby Smart put it onto the field of what they do at UJ, the type of development that they do, and how they get their guys NFL ready. But that wraps it up for us on this episode. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. As always, going to do the whole rundown of social medias.
Plug it.
Yep. Got to plug it all. Got to like the video on YouTube for us, guys. That really helps us out. Follow us on Twitter, as Jeremiah has dropped it down below. There's our @ right there. We post questions all the time. We usually give a little teaser as well to our King of the Hill topic of the day. Try and get some interactions from you guys, get some comments as well. So come over there and join us on that. And then you can find us on Facebook as well with the same. You can just search up Dogs Daily Pod. You can find us on there as well. So yeah, do all that good stuff for us. Helps us out, help us grow. And Jeremiah, I'll let you close us out.
Absolutely. And as always, guys, keep it classy in the Classic City. We will catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Dogs Daily on Sports Illustrated. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Dogs Daily crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at Jeremiah_Stod7, to Kyle at DK Fubderberg, and Jonathan at 22_Jman. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime, go Dogs!